Hello, and thank you for joining me for this bite-sized episode of the Life Lessons podcast with me, Simon Mundie, in which we revisit one nugget from one of my previous conversations and have a closer look. Who doesn't want to know how to stop unpleasant and even intrusive thoughts from bothering them? While lots of people talk about positive thinking and training yourself to turn a negative into something upbeat, the truth is that takes a lot of effort and it doesn't always work because our minds have a negativity bias. Plus, I don't know anyone who can actually stop themselves from thinking. The trick then is to stop focusing on the content of thoughts and recognise the context. If you can spot that a thought is just a thought, you don't actually have to worry about what it's saying. Dr. Russ Harris is one of the world's leading psychologists and author of two fantastic books, The Happiness Trap and The Confidence Gap. In this clip from our conversation, he shares a portable mindfulness technique that isn't meditation, that can sap the power out of any bothersome thought or feeling at any moment. This is seriously powerful, if paradoxical stuff, and I can't recommend it enough. Over to you, Russ.
Basically, when this thought shows up, if I act on this thought, is it going to help me to do what I want to do, be the person I want to be, do the things that matter? If it does, then kind of use it, let it guide you. But if it doesn't, then you just, okay, there's a thought, there's my mind. In ACT, we're very big on getting people to kind of name the story. So, if you've got a story coming up, I can't cope, I'm too stupid, I haven't got what it takes, I'm weak, whatever, then, okay, there's the stupid story, there's the weak story, or any kind of way of non-judgmentally naming that cognitive process is useful, actually. There's radio doom and gloom playing in my head, or there's my inner critic beating up on me, or quite often we encourage people to use a little technique called thanking your mind. So whatever your mind says, no matter how mean or nasty it is, just with a sense of humor, a sense of playfulness, you just say, thanks, mind. Thanks for sharing. You're an idiot. You're a loser. You're pathetic. Thanks, mind. Well, you can use that thanks, mind technique, but you're still a loser. Thanks, mind. So you're not agreeing with it, but you're not fighting with it. You're going, okay, that's what you're giving me in this moment, and then focus your attention on what's important right now.
Let's get into then a bit of diffusion techniques, because like I said, this is something that is incredibly powerful. And if I just relate back to my issues that I used to have with sleep. So I used to go to bed and my fear mechanism basically started to see bed as a threat. So I would go towards bed, my heart would be beating, my churning stomach, thoughts of I'm not going to sleep, tomorrow I'm going to be a complete mess, all this kind of stuff. And when I was in bed, the only options I thought I had available to me were ignoring the thoughts, which is essentially repressing the thoughts, or to get into a dialogue with them. And I'd go, have this kind of conversation in my head where it became, you're not going to sleep tonight. I go, hey, you don't know that I'm not going to sleep tonight, fearing in the back of my mind that this is absolutely true. And I'd go round and round. And then I was taught this diffusion technique of acknowledging the thought. So you're aware of the thought and then adding a little prefix. And the best one for me has been, I am having the thought that I'm not going to sleep tonight. I am having the thought that I'm not going to be able to perform well tomorrow. And actually, I've adapted it slightly to now, I am aware of the thought that I'm not going to sleep tonight, or whatever it may be. And you can use this in any situation. But this and there are lots of them, aren't there? And from memory, I think this is your favorite one as well. But this particular diffusion technique, it's a form of mindfulness as well.
Yeah. That's probably my favorite diffusion technique, and I like it because it's just so simple. A thought shows up, I'm a loser, and our instinct is to kind of just respond to that, as you say, either take it as true or treat it as a threat that I need to get rid of. But if you add a little prefix, I am noticing the thought that I'm a loser, or here's my mind telling me I'm a loser, or here's the loser story, or aha, the loser thought, I know this one, any of those kind of things. It's just that kind of, it helps you to step back and see, this is a thought. This is a bunch of words popping up in my head. And we don't need to debate whether it's true or false or positive or negative. It's just acknowledging this is a thought. And once I know that this is a bunch of words popping up, then I have a choice about what I do. Is this something that it's going to be useful for me to let guide my actions, or is this something just to kind of let come and stay and go in its own good time while I focus on something more important? In a state of fusion, our thoughts seem like threats we need to get rid of, or they seem like commands and rules that we have to obey, or they seem like something very, very important that we have to give all our attention to, or they seem like really good advice that we should follow, or they just seem like the absolute truth. But when we learn how to diffuse from our thoughts, to step back, our thoughts may or may not be true. They're certainly not threats that I have to fight with. They're certainly not rules that I have to obey. They may or may not be, good advice to follow. But once I can see their thoughts, it makes it easier for me to make that judgment call. And as you say, it's mindfulness, but a lot of mindfulness is very heavily based around meditation. And unfortunately, a lot of people find meditation either very hard or very boring, or both. And so one of the things I like about it is it's got lots of little mindfulness techniques that are very easy to use. This particular one, I usually call it noticing and naming. You notice the thought and then you name it. Here it is. I'm having it. I'm noticing it. I'm aware of. There it is again.
Yeah. And you can just use these diffusion techniques all the time. And so, for example, if I'm playing tennis, I'm having the thought that I'm going to hit a double fault. Boom, I drop out of the thought. If I'm going to, similar to you, give a talk, I'm having the thought that this isn't going to go well. Hello, thoughts that this isn't going to go well. Come on in, make yourself at home. And it completely transforms your relationship to it. And you mentioned fusion, and a metaphor that I quite like. And I've got it in my head now because I'm looking at my TV screen, which is right in front of me, a big TV screen. It's not that big. I don't want to sound grand, but a TV screen, right? And it's black at the moment. So there's nothing on the TV screen. But obviously when I turn the television on, various scenes will appear on that. Some of them might be traumatic. Some of them might be, let's say I watch a horror movie. And it's like the screen itself getting lost in the content of the movie and forgetting that the screen is not the movie.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Or a similar analogy would be like, fusion is like watching that horror film all by yourself in a dark room, in a dark, deserted house in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of a thunderstorm, in pitch blackness, right? Whereas diffusion is like, it's seeing that same horror movie on the television screen, but it's just a small screen in the corner of the room. It's broad daylight. The windows are open. You're hanging around with your mates, doing something like fun, like listening to your podcast, for example. And, it's the same movie playing, but it's a very different impact that it's having on you.
Thank you for listening to this bite-sized episode of the Life Lessons podcast. If you could please share this episode on social media with someone who you think might benefit, I'd be immensely grateful. Until next time, have a great week.